Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette. And we're back here on a Victory Monday after another win by Nebraska football, improving to 3-0 for the first time since 2016. So things are trending in the right direction for the Huskers. So we're going to break down Northern Iowa, offer up our final takeaways, the things that we liked and loathed from the win on Saturday. And then we're going to look ahead to Illinois. We got a short week on Friday night and a ranked matchup and a chance for the Huskers to get their first ranked win in 8 years. So big week for Nebraska football. Danny, how are you doing on this Monday morning afternoon?
I'm doing good. Wide awake for a Monday afternoon, and very happy about the state of Nebraska football right now. I know some fans were upset about the victory on Saturday, which is kind of crazy, but we'll get into it. But overall, very happy to be 3-0, and looking forward very much so to Friday's matchup.
Should be a fun game. And before we get to breaking down this Northern Iowa win, if you guys haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on this video, get into the comment section, tell us your takeaways from what you saw on Saturday. But yeah, there was some grumbling from Nebraska, from Husker Nation, I guess, Nebraska fans about the win. But most people, I thought, were pretty satisfied with it. I mean, we told people, they didn't want to believe us, but we told people this was going to be, a pretty competitive football game, and it kind of played out how I thought it would. I mean, Northern Iowa had more success offensively than I thought they would, especially on third down. The 6 third down conversions are still kind of sitting in my craw a little bit. They had 71 plays compared to 48 for Nebraska. So, I mean, that's not a recipe as the Cornhuskers that you want to have repeated every single week. So, I mean, there were some things that could be nitpicky about. And so what I said in my takeaways is, Nebraska's playing really well right now. They're playing really good football. I don't think that they're playing at the championship level right now, but that's a really high standard. I'm talking about like winning Big Ten championship level football. So they're not quite there, but they're pretty darn close. And I think that's a pretty impressive thing to say after 3 games, especially thinking about where this program was last year and a few years ago.
They're pretty darn close with a freshman quarterback to boot. And I think some people, forget that, yeah, Dylan Raiola is really good, but he's also still a freshman. And the fact that he's doing this so far this year is not normal. I think when you look at, the body of work he's been able to put in, it's been extremely impressive. And, I thought that he did his job on Saturday. He did have that interception, but I mean,
That was
truthfully,
on Jalen Lloyd.
yeah, that was on Jalen Lloyd. That wasn't on him.
Yeah,
So
he's got to go get that. That was a perfectly thrown football, and so yeah, I mean, not to. I mean, Matt Rule didn't want to say anything about Jalen Lloyd. I'm not saying he made a bad play, but
no,
or but he needs to go get that ball. That interception is 100% on him. Dylan put it in a perfect place.
he did, and I think even with all that, I think that we have the not only the quarterback of the future, but the quarterback that can lead us to bigger places right now. And people have said that Nebraska hasn't been tested yet, and this, that, and the other thing. Well, if they want Nebraska to have a test, it's certainly going to be on Friday.
Yeah, they will get tested on Friday night. And here's some, some stats that where Nebraska ranks in some certain things, which are very surprising. Completion percentage, ninth in college football, 73.9%. They are 12th in first downs with 74 first downs. 23rd in turnover margin +1, and then tied for 23rd in third down conversions, 50%. So that's another big indicator of how impactful Dylan Raiola has been on this offense. I really liked that he got engaged in the running game a little bit. I know it didn't work the second time they got stopped short. I actually wanted Matt Rule to kick a field goal there, but at any rate, I like that they had him engaged in that running game because, man, if you can just do that every once in a while where the defense has to think like, man, maybe Dylan could keep it here in that zone read, that just if the defense has to respect your quarterback run game at all, it opens things up for the other guys. And I liked how they used Dylan. I thought he played really well.
I thought he played really well too, and I thought, I thought that the running backs did their job. I understand we didn't rush it as much as we probably should have, but I feel like Emmett Johnson, that touchdown run at the end signified that he's very much still a part of the rotation. And I know Dante Dowdell is the starter, but Johnson showed that he's not going to go away and that he's still very much a part of what Nebraska wants to do in terms of running the football. And then they even got some non-running backs involved with Ja'Cory Barney with that nice touchdown run. I believe it was from 18 yards out. He showed off his speed right there, and he's such a dynamic freshman. He truly is. And he was able to show that again on Saturday. So there were a lot of good things. And, like you said, we didn't think that this was going to be a 60 to 10 game. We thought it was going to be a lot closer than that. And, you know, overall, there were some things that Nebraska needed to clean up, but I thought that this was a good win nonetheless. Because truth be told, I think this Northern Iowa team is a very tough team. They know what they wanted to do. They wanted to run the football, and they did that. And I think they had a extremely physical offensive line. And I think people were saying that Nebraska didn't do a good enough job of getting pressure. Well, I think the Northern Iowa offensive line was pretty good, and that's a tip of the cap to them for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's you look at a lot of their completions; they were shorter completions. So it's not like they it seemed like to me they realized that hey, we have to get the ball out quickly. And Nebraska missed some tackles, and like I think you pointed out, they had like some of those curls and comeback routes, some of those shorter timing routes they had trouble with. So I mean, that's something that Illinois may try to take advantage of. And the thing I think that really hurt Nebraska as well was the quarterback running, and so that's definitely going to be a focal point this week with Altemeyer there at Illinois. He's definitely somebody who can run the football as well as throw it. So the thing I like though about the defense is they Nebraska's not I wouldn't call it a bend but don't break defense, but they did that a little bit in this game, and every time they needed to, whether it was the Malcolm Hartzog interception, they came up with a stop. I realized it was in the fourth quarter late, but they still made the plays they needed to. So they held to a field goal, and that's the best. I mean, you don't want to give up 8 third and fourth down conversions or whatever, and as many rushing yards as they did, but they allowed 3 points, and at the end of the day, that's what matters, and that's what good defenses do. Even if they give up big plays, they recover and get stops, and that's what the Huskers did on Saturday night. So I can't fault their defense for how they played.
No, I can't either. They just need to work on the tackling a little bit more, and I think then they'll be good to go. They did struggle tackling a little bit, but I honestly think a lot of that too was their running backs were just so skilled. I mean, Ty Edwards is a very skilled football player, and they had another good running back in there whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. But I think a lot of the missed tackles, when they tried to tackle the running backs, was just good running back play. And I think tackling is something that they're going to need to work on, and they're going to need to be better at on Friday. But I thought people put too much of an emphasis on the tackling itself, because I just think it was just. Those were good running backs that Northern Iowa brought to the table.
Yeah, and I think Rule mentioned the tackling as well. It's something that he saw, and they'll clean it up and they'll get better at it. I'm not worried about this team's tackling. I'm not concerned about that. I mean, just look at the way that they cover, and this defense will be fired up on Friday night. So that's going to be an exciting matchup. But overall, what's truly crazy though is Nebraska got 48 plays offensively, and they turned that into 423 yards. I mean, I know it would have been nice to put a 50 spot up there on the board or a 40 spot. Maybe they could have if they didn't have the interception and they didn't have the turnover on downs. But even those drives, the interception drive was a one-play drive, and it was the right read, like I said. But beyond that, I think the shortest drive that they had, even that didn't end up in points, was 6 plays for 41 yards. So, I mean, they were incredibly efficient. The passing game, it just seems like Dylan Raiola never makes a mistake. I know he had the interception, but that was the correct play. And it just seems like, whether it's the right read, the right throw, I just trust him with the football. And, that he's a big reason why Nebraska's winning games. I mean, if you don't beat yourself, and if you have a really good defense, you can win a lot of football games. I think we've seen that. And, look at Iowa. We've seen Iowa win a lot of games with just absolute trash at quarterback. And you look at last year, I felt like Nebraska had a lot of those same characteristics in terms of the defense, the running game, all that type of stuff. And now, not only did we get like a game managing type quarterback, I think we have a quarterback that's as good as anybody in the Big Ten. So, and then this kid's like super elite, and I'm very excited about the prospects of, this defense and, that quarterback over the next few years.
Finally have complimentary football, which is something we haven't had in years. And that's always a good thing to have. And, when you look at, like you said, his decision-making, and I just look at his poise. He doesn't panic in the pocket. If something doesn't go right, he's very level-headed. He's calm. And that's what the leaders of a football team do. The team goes how the leader goes. And Raiola, I'm sure he's nervous to some degree, but on the field, he seems unshakable, and he seems very confident in what he wants to do. And that's just a kind of notch in the belt for him.
Yeah, and it was good to see Carter Nelson get into the end zone, on that 24-yard route.
Yeah,
And yeah, I mean, 4 catches, 48 yards. Like this guy, it's just laughable to me. I remember the people who said, "Oh, Carter Nelson's not going to be able to make an impact for like 2 years, and he's going to have to learn how to play 11-man football." Like football ain't that hard, man. When you can
yeah,
run and catch and do the things that Carter Nelson can do, like yeah, maybe he's not going to have the full array of the playbook, but he doesn't need it. Just give him a few plays here and there. He's clearly, I mean, that's like with Ja'Cory Barney. He's clearly one of the most explosive athletes on this team. So I love the fact that like Pete Carroll, when they were great at USC, like they didn't mess around. If you were the best player as a freshman, you got in there and played right away. So I love it. And I mean, just thinking about this offense with Jalen Lloyd, who caught a 59-yard pass, Ja'Cory Barney, Carter Nelson, all here for multiple years. I do want to see. I still want to see a little bit more out of Nair and Banks, but I feel like they're also getting a lot of coverage attention too. So
yeah.
that's the thing with Raiola is he, if you take away his first, second option, he'll go to the third, he'll go to the fourth, he'll go to the fifth. He has that ability, and it's just been really fun to watch this team operate. And I guess I was going to wait a little bit to touch on this, but with the Matt Ludwig, he did get projected to Nebraska, and I have to think that seeing Carter Nelson do what he did Saturday night, plus the atmosphere, but I feel like the Carter Nelson thing had to help with that recruitment.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Ludwig is so dynamic. He played 3 positions in high school. I believe it was linebacker, wide receiver, and tight end, if I'm not mistaken. So,
yeah, he's
or
played
quarterback. Was it
running back
quarterback?
into.
Yeah.
He's played quarterback and running back, so he's done a lot.
So
He also plays basketball.
he's a jack of all trades, and I
Yeah.
know. Did you say that you covered him in high school a little bit?
Yeah, I've covered him a few times. Yeah, this is junior year. So I watched him play twice in person last year. Hopefully I'll get a chance to see him this year. But yeah, he's a really exciting player. I definitely think he's a better prospect than Quinn Clark. I really like Quinn Clark too, but this guy's got it all.
Well, I wonder what's going on with Quinn Clark. Not that I expected him to necessarily be an All-American, but I haven't heard his name at all. Maybe he's redshirting?
I think he's going to redshirt, but I heard quite a bit about him actually. I heard some really positive buzz about him in fall camp.
Oh,
So
yeah. Just
yeah,
like, I'm not in
it's
terms of games.
no, I mean, I just think where they're at with in terms of the depth chart. I don't know if he's gotten in yet. I mean, you have to think with like Hall, McMorris. There's just a lot of bodies at wide receiver, but I think that he maybe next year will start being a factor. But yeah, another guy from Montana, Matt Ludwig, projected here to Nebraska, 252 overall by Steve Wiltfong. So that would be another nice pickup, and they haven't got any commitments yet in that 2026 class. But Isaac Jensen, Jace Reynolds, and now Matt Ludwig all projected to Nebraska. Michael Clayton too. So they have some really strong roots building in that 2026 class already.
And, aside from recruiting, one of the things I wanted to talk about was Matt Rule said in his post-game press conference that he would address why Micah Mazuka was not on the field on Saturday. Mazuka started against UTEP in Colorado, but he was not on the field Saturday. So I'm wondering if it's an off-the-field thing or something, but I would pay attention to that closely because I thought he did pretty well the first 2 games on the line.
Yeah, I believe Henry Lavtoski replaced him, and I think Lavtoski's fine, but he's not quite the mauler that Micah Mazuka is, and I do think that he was having a really positive impact on the running game. So I will be interested to see what Matt Rule says about that probably today. I'm not sure if he's meeting with the media today. I'm assuming he is. He usually does. So hopefully he'll be available Friday night. I mean, this is going to be a knockout, drag-out fight, I think, on Friday night with
It
Illinois.
always is, yeah.
Before we get to that, though, let's get to our liked and loathed, what we liked and what we loathed from this 34-3 win for Nebraska. And I do have to say, great teams, good teams win, great teams cover the spread. Nebraska's 3-0 now against the spread. So when's the last time that we could say that? I mean, we've said that a lot already this year. The last time we've been ranked, the last time they've started 3-0, it's been a long time for a lot of these things. But so I'll start, I guess, in one thing I liked. I already mentioned it here earlier, but was the offensive efficiency. I mean, 48 plays to only get 48 plays and to turn that into 423 yards, 34 points. Really only had one bad possession, I would say, which was the interception, and that wasn't, it was just kind of a bomb shot. It didn't really even hurt you. So I mean, the fact that they put together a drive on every single possession, like their offense just, it felt like, when I'm playing Madden and I got it rolling like on all pro level, like they just didn't seem like there was anything that Northern Iowa could do to stop them, that Nebraska could only stop themselves, which is what happened. And so I feel really good about where the offense is going into Big Ten play.
I definitely do too. And one of the things I liked was the play of the freshmen. Carter Nelson, Ja'Cory Barney again. We saw Vincent Shavers out there. We saw, let's see, I'm trying to think of some others. There were a couple more that I saw out there. I think I saw he's not a freshman, but a newcomer in Vince Genatone. I saw him out there. So I liked the impact that the freshmen were able to make, and it gave me hope that these guys will be able to be a huge part of the future.
One thing I loathed, which I also kind of mentioned already, wasn't a big fan of the third down defense. That has got to get better this week. 6 third down conversions, 2 fourth down conversions allowed. That's why Northern Iowa was able to keep the ball for 71 plays. And it's fine that it happened this game, but if you allow Big Ten teams to run 71 plays on you, it's going to be, if they have a 23 play advantage on you, that's not going to work out well. So the third down defense has to improve this week, which I think that it will.
Yeah, I think that it will. And one of the things that I kind of loathed was the time of possession. Northern Iowa had 38 minutes of possession. Nebraska only had 21, and I understand that that was based a lot on Northern Iowa's offense. But at the same time, if you let these long drives continue to happen and wear down your defense, that's not a recipe for success.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to get off the field on third down. One thing that I liked was the Tristan Albano field goals. I predicted that he would make a couple before the game. They were both, 31 yards and in, so they weren't long field goals, but he missed a 31-yarder last week. And I feel like with kicking, it's a lot like, free throw shooting or putting, or, I compared it to like a basketball player who, struggling from the field. Sometimes you need to make that free throw or make a layup, and then you get that guy suddenly gets going. So I'm hoping that that's the case for Tristan Albano. He saw the kicks go in, and now when he steps back for like a 45-yarder, he's going to knock it through.
Isaac Gifford and John Bullock were all over the field, and I get that those are two people and not necessarily one thing that I liked, but the play of those two, Gifford and Bullock, returning veterans, if you will. I believe Gifford had 10 total tackles, and Bullock had 9, if I'm not mistaken. So I liked how they were able to step up and, continue to be those veteran leaders of the defense. And I've always loved the way both of them have played. They're just scrappy. They fly around. They fly the football. So I really liked how they, continued to show their gritty play style on Saturday.
So the last thing that I loathed was the officiating, the lack of holding calls specifically, and this was a problem dating back to last season with like Nash Hutmaker and Ty Robinson. And I get like, I know the old saying, like you could call holding on every play, but if they hold, you have to call it quite a bit. And I feel like that the Nebraska defensive line is getting punished for being so good because they're so good. They're getting held all the time that refs just, have stopped calling it. This happened to Michigan last year, where they were just constantly held and it just wasn't called. But I mean, you can see it. Nash, Jamari Butler, the jersey grabs, like at some point you have got to throw, because honestly, there's no, letting the offensive line hold, that's the biggest advantage in football. You see it all the time in the NFL. It opens up things for running backs if the quarterback has time. Like, you cannot give the offense that advantage, and officials continue to do it against Nebraska's defense, and it's really frustrating.
One of the things I loathed was the fact that Marcus Satterfeld continued to pass late in the game when he could have just probably run out the clock and utilized the running game a little bit more. It's not an end of the world type scenario, but he likes to pass the football no matter what. I mean, we saw it last year, and Matt Rule kind of had to reel him in a little bit, but I would just like to see a little bit more running late in the game. We don't need to pass when we're up 34-3. I get you have Dylan Raiola, and I get that you want to continue to move your offense, but I'd love to see you running the football a little bit more. So I kind of load that on Saturday. I'd love to kind of have, the running backs kind of take over in, those last few minutes of the game.
Yeah, I agree with you, but overall, I liked how everything looked on offense. So really quick here, the last couple of minutes before we move ahead, we'll cover Illinois on Thursday much more in depth. We'll have our predictions and all that stuff. But looking ahead to this matchup right now, Illinois is number 24. We talked about this. If they won, they were probably going to get ranked because, sorry, your BC Eagles didn't quite get it done at Missouri. So that opened the door. Yeah. It was close, though. They're a good team. They're going to be a team to watch in the ACC. But Luke Altmaier is a guy you got to watch for Illinois. 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 69% completion percentage, and this offense is really doing some good things. Averaging 32 points per game. They're allowing just 8 points per game. So the Brett Bielema defense working well. They're averaging 4.2 or 4.4 yards per rushing attempt. So Illinois running the football pretty well. I'm not sure. Taking a look at just who they've played so far. Eastern Illinois, they did beat Kansas, Central Michigan. So a pretty similar schedule to Nebraska so far, but the Huskers have opened as a 9-point favorite. So what are your initial reactions to that?
I think it's going to be a little bit closer than 9. I think Illinois is a very good team. One of the guys that I've kept my eye on as I've kind of reviewed Illinois this week is Pat Bryant. I mean, he's coming off a game against Central Michigan, where he caught 7 passes for 102 yards, and then in the opener he caught 5 passes for 63 yards. So he has dynamic playmaking ability at the wide receiver position, and the secondary for Nebraska hasn't been terrible, but they've had some leaks, and so I'm curious to see how they defend a guy like Pat Bryant, and he's going to be a player that I'm watching and making sure that Nebraska locks up.
Yeah, and on the defensive side of the ball, Illinois, 6 interceptions already this season. Xavier Scott with 3, Miles Scott with 2, Torrey Cox Jr. with 1. So they will test Dylan Raiola and the pass offense for Nebraska, who's done a great job of not turning it over. So it's going to be a great matchup. I wish it wasn't on Friday night, but it is what it is, I guess.
I wish the Purdue game wasn't on Peacock. Like, what are we doing here? I know I complained about Peacock last week, but I'm going to complain about Peacock until kickoff. So probably even during the game. So, it's interesting for Illinois. They always, or not always, but the last couple of years, they produced some really, really good corners and really, really good secondary players. So it seems like that tradition is continuing this year.
It is, and we'll get into that more on Thursday when we talk about Illinois. But yeah, it's going to be a fascinating matchup. I definitely think it's the biggest challenge for this Nebraska football team. So come check out our episode on Thursday. We'll do our keys and our predictions for Illinois. Again, if you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.